To legalise or not to legalise?
Ms Ardern's keeping an open mind on legalising cannabis.
New Zealanders have a real opportunity now.
We want people to be well informed. We want a good choice.
Imagine an Aotearoa New Zealand where we're not throwing away hundreds of millions of dollars a year.
I worry that we haven't got the testing for drug driving.
And we know that the more readily available it is, the more kids will consume it. The more kids consume it, the worse the negative outcomes will be.
They'll have a draft law that could be changed by an incoming government.
The government is prepared with a regulatory regime that deals with the obvious issue, which is the harm that cannabis can cause.
The Cannabis Debate. With Heather Duplessis-Allen, live on your home for Vote 2020. News Talk ZB.
Kia ora and welcome to tonight's Cannabis Debate. I'm Heather Duplessis-Allen. Tonight we're going to debate the upcoming Cannabis Referendum, and we're going to help you make up your mind about whether to support the cannabis legalisation and control bill. I'm joined tonight by Ross Bell, Executive Director of the Drug Foundation. Kylie Quince is an AUT Associate Professor of Law. Chris Cahill is the President of the New Zealand Police Association. And Aaron Ironside is the spokesperson for Nope, Say Nope to Dope. Welcome all of you. It's good to have you with us. Now, before we get into this, I'd like to give you a 30-second elevator pitch to outline where you each stand on the referendum. Give us a bit of an idea of what you think. So I'll start with you, Ross.
Well, New Zealand has the chance to be a mature country and do something progressive and acknowledge that what we've been trying for the last 50 or 60 years around cannabis has not worked. If we want to treat cannabis as a health issue, we vote yes for the Cannabis Legalisation and Control Bill, which will put fantastic public health controls in place, will protect young people, and will, see us treat cannabis properly, get real.
Okay, Kylie, what do you have to say?
So some of the harms from cannabis stem directly from its prohibition, from it being illegal. And those include unnecessary arrests, convictions, prosecutions, convictions, and still in some cases imprisonment solely for possession and use of cannabis. So, and for people that use problematically, as Ross has flagged, there are better ways that we can regulate and address people's health-related harms. So harms from legalisation itself, from prohibition itself include the ability for people, restrictions on people's ability to seek health-related interventions, to travel, to keep jobs. So some of those things stem directly from the fact that cannabis is illegal.
Okay, Chris, you?
Well, we think it's such an important decision the public need to decide. Clearly the police will police what the public vote for, but it needs to be an informed decision. They need to look at what the no vote is saying. Will the harms they say come about, or will the positive that the yes vote is saying be the reality? Do some research, look at the key parts of the Act, then make your decision, because it is an important decision for New Zealand.
Yeah, absolutely it is. And Aaron, what do you have to say?
Well, there's three things really. Two are the fact that we're dealing with a couple of the big issues already under the law. We've made medicinal cannabis legal. A no vote will make the government fix that law because clearly it's broken. We've written into the Misuse of Drugs Act the fact that you won't get a criminal conviction for smoking a joint. So we're already working on that issue. But the big issue that remains unaddressed is the devastating harm that cannabis causes those who use it before the age of 25. Now, this law does very little, if anything, to help them. It sends them back to the black market. The black market will go into competition with the 400 new shops. The result is the price of cannabis goes down and more cannabis gets used and sold than ever before, including among our young.
All right, thank you all for that. There's something I want you to think about during this debate while we're talking about this, and it's the thing of mind for many parents, this will be really important to them, is how do we protect kids from weed if we do choose to legalise? I'm going to ask each of you that question at the end of the debate, but in the meantime, let us crack into it. Let's talk a little bit about availability, use and potency. So Chris, maybe you can start us off with this. How easy is it to get weed at the moment?
Well, it's relatively easy, but it's not as easy as it once was. And that's one of the real challenges. I can't understand why in Northland, where it grows wild, it's easier to get hold of methamphetamine and cannabis. And it's because of the gangs have suppressed the supply of cannabis so they can sell more meth. And this is one of the positives, that this could change that, give people an alternative market. But don't think the black market won't fight back. Yeah.
We will talk about the black market. I heard you say in my ear there, Kylie. How many phone calls would you have to make to get a hold of weed?
Oh, not too many, but I completely agree with Chris. I'm from Taitukuto, from Northland.
Yeah.
And meth is, it's more easy. It's easier to manufacture covertly, as you say. Cannabis can grow wild and grow well, but it's in the open, isn't it? It's out on the whenua, it's out on the territory. So you're taking a different risk to grow cannabis than you are to manufacture.
We had a little chat about this today in the office, Ross. How many phone calls would we have to make? Most of us only had to make one in order to get weed. What about you?
Well, I wouldn't try to purchase cannabis at the moment because I'd probably lose my job.
But you know, I mean, fair enough. But you know what I mean? It is easy to
cannabis
get, right?
is, well, despite what Chris has said, cannabis use in New Zealand is increasing, so the supply is still there. New Zealanders are still among some of the highest users of cannabis in the world, including our youth cannabis use. And we're remembering we've had this prohibition in place to stop that happening. At some point we have to get real and see that it is happening, acknowledge that our approach is not working, and vote for change.
Right. So, Aaron, if it's that easy to get hold of it, and you know how easy it is to get hold of it as well, having used it quite significantly for some time of your life, why don't we just legalise it?
Can I answer the other question about how many calls?
Yes, by all means.
Because the answer is 0. Because my son showed me the other day on his phone that a former high school buddy sends him social media messages 3 or 4 times a week offering to sell him cannabis. The black market is no longer a tinny house in the neighbourhood. It's coming to our young people. It's agile and it's not going anywhere. So it's even worse than we've imagined.
Yeah, but so, I mean, do we want to live with it like that?
Well, we're not suggesting that prohibition is wonderful and perfect in a utopia. What we're asking ourselves is legalisation better? And the evidence says that young people will find it even easier to get. I mean, let's imagine 400 stores up and down the country, people growing cannabis in their backyard. And we're asking ourselves, is it really true that we'd expect young people to use cannabis less when it will be everywhere around them? And we've already agreed tonight, it's already really easy to get.
Okay, so that is a horrifying situation, Ross, for a lot of parents out there to know that kids as young as that are getting their hands on it via social media and whatnot. Is legalisation going to make that a better situation? Is it going to improve that?
Absolutely it will. So the problems we're talking about happen now under our current system. So any change is going to be better than that. But looking at the facts around what happens when countries and other jurisdictions do legally regulate cannabis, we have not seen youth use increase. In some jurisdictions, we've seen youth use go down. Drug dealers, do not check
that seems so counterintuitic.
Well,
why
this
would
is
that be
the
the
thing.
case?
It is where it is counterintuitive. Right now, cannabis is still the bread and butter of organised crime. And putting it in the legal market, we have to acknowledge the fact that there's still hundreds of thousands of adult New Zealanders who want to consume cannabis, so a legal market will be good for them. But what we've seen in those jurisdictions, the thing that I really like about the bill we're voting for, is there's great protections for young people. There's more money that will go into prevention and education and treatment, and it's so much better, so much easier to talk to young people about a substance when it is legally regulated. No one is saying, well, we're worried about alcohol, so let's make that prohibited. We can do good public health, look at successes with tobacco. We haven't tried to prohibit tobacco, we've put public health controls in place. And we've seen with tobacco youth consumption coming down because we're growing up. We're a mature country where we put rules around the taxation. We don't advertise it. So we've got strict rules around tobacco. The cannabis bill that we're voting on is even better than our tobacco law.
All right, Kylie, I see the bill reports, and this is obviously, these reports have got a fair bit of publicity recently. They are estimating that currently about 3%, which is significant enough, 3% of New Zealanders smoke weed daily. If we were to legalise it, it would go up to about 1%, by 1% to 4%. Does that seem believable to you? That's a tiny increase.
I'd have to trust the statistics. I'm not a public health statistician or modeller. So the question is, if you are using daily, which is at problematic levels, probably, then what should you be doing? And something else is wrong in your life. You probably need a health-based intervention. Having a criminal justice barrier in the way of you seeking that intervention, whether it's a hard barrier in terms of you've been sent down a criminal justice pathway, so you might be literally in a place where you can't access that kind of health, or even just the psychosocial aspect of the stigma of, perhaps not being able to reach out for help because you're doing something illegal.
Okay, what do you reckon, Aaron? Do those numbers seem believable to you, that it just jumps by 1%?
It's not believable and it's not true.
What do you think it's going to be?
Everywhere we've looked, the stats are consistent that youth usage goes up. Now, Ross is shaking his head, but let me tell you about the half stories that you hear. You'll hear a stat from Canada that says that youth rates went down by 50%. What they won't tell you is that in that survey, that data is tagged use with caution. But I didn't hear Ross use it with caution. I didn't hear him tell you that Canada has a...
Why is it tagged thus?
Because there are small sample sizes in that survey. In fact, that was 3-month usage. In the column beside it, daily use, they said F, it's marked F, too unreliable to be published. But Canada has another national survey they've used for decades, the Tobacco, Alcohol and Drug Survey. And that survey said there was a 22% increase among 16 to 19-year-olds in the 12 months following legalisation. And that, I believe.
And do you disagree with that, Ross?
Yeah, I'm not going to spend all night debating facts. The Prime Minister commissioned the chief...
we have to debate
the
facts.
Prime Minister... Well, my survey's better than his survey. The Prime Minister's chief science advisor looked at all of this research and they found that legalisation does not necessarily lead to increased use. Adult use might increase. It's usually amongst people over the age of 50. Youth use can stay the same and sometimes goes down. And so I know that it's counterintuitive, but this is the reality that we've seen in those jurisdictions, that the sky does not fall in.
Okay. What about the THC? You're very concerned about that, aren't you, Aaron?
The THC level is a big issue because most people don't understand what a problem it is. They don't realise that back in the 60s and 70s it was around 3%. When I was a user in the 90s, maybe 8 to 10%. And now it's regularly above 20%, which means that regular users today are already used to a product far stronger than the one they'll be able to get from the legal shop.
Surely that's an argument for regulation.
They won't like that product.
Okay, so it's limited at 15%. What's wrong with that?
15% is still high.
You want it to be higher?
No, not at all. The clinical level for high THC is 10% in medical trials. So anything above that is the kind of product that triggers psychosis. It's the kind of product that leads to serious mental health harms.
But you think, Chris, that this might be too low?
Well, my concern is that if you don't meet a level of demand that people have, and what I saw when I went to Canada, it was very clear. You went to the shops, I asked the people running the shops, what's your most popular products? The cheapest product with the highest THC levels. So you've got to get that mix right or you won't get the black market out. They'll continue to go for the cheap, high THC. So you've got to get that mix right. Going too low won't achieve it. And look, the other thing I say about whether youth are using more or less, certainly the information I got, it wasn't more. But what I do wonder about is the fact that it's legal driving them away from it and saying, actually, this isn't risky anymore. Let's try something else that is illegal. And that would be a concern that I think. And that's where I come back to good research has to follow it up. We have to have benchmarks now, and if it's legalised, then follow it up with good research to see if we've made the wrong call.
And reverse it if we have.
If we've made the wrong call, we should.
And that's the beauty of the bill. There's a 5-year review period built in. So if some of the things aren't quite working, you can change those things.
But policy is sticky, right? Once you put it in place, it's really hard to get rid of it.
Well, look, the drug law, the thing that we're operating under now was passed in 1975, so I'm hoping it's not going to be that as sticky as that one.
All right, fair enough. Let's take a break with these guys. We are having the cannabis referendum debate. When we come back, we're going to talk about that black market that Chris Cahill was just talking about. It's 7:18 on News Talk ZB.
legalise or not to legalise? It's the Cannabis Debate on News Talk ZB.
All right, welcome back. It's 7:21, and of course you're with Kylie Quince, Ross Bell, Chris Cahill and Aaron Ironside, and I'm Heather Duplessis Allen hosting this debate for you this evening. We're going to talk about the black market, the policing and justice. This is something that Chris was just raising before the break. Chris, do you think, part of the argument for legalisation is that we get rid of the black market. The truth is we're not going to be able to ever get rid of it, are we?
You'll never get rid of all the black market. But when I went to Canada, they said 50% of people had bought from the legal market. Not necessarily every time. And on the face of it, you'd say that's a failure. But actually, any business that could get 50% of a market in the first 12 months of setting up is actually a success. But ironically, the people you're trying to protect are probably the least likely to go away from the black markets. That's the young, rural New Zealand, a lot of youth Māori. They will go with the price point. They won't be the middle-aged New Zealanders that are happy to go to the shop and browse for the different products. So that the black market will still control them. And that's unfortunate, I think.
Yeah, so how do we get around that, Ross? What do we do? Do we undercut the gangs, sell it for cheaper?
Well, and this is the tricky balancing act, and there are some ways that you can, as much as possible, try to undercut the black market. I think that the pricing is going to be important, making sure you're giving a product to those adults, for the adults who want it. I think, going back to Chris's point about Canada, within 2 years, significant benefits, shifting people away from the illicit market. Remembering they were trying to unpick prohibition, which we've had for 50 or 60 years. In 2 years, they've had more than half of the consumers using the legal market. When it comes to young people who would try, where the black market will still try to serve that population, again, the beauty of what we're voting for is more money for drug education and prevention, and actually treat young people as intelligent people and teach them about the harms from cannabis. We've done it for tobacco, huge success there. And we can do the same here with the Burl report that people have been talking about. They estimated over $600 million, which is going to be ring-fenced for harm reduction, will go back into things like drug education.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to just put this out. If you're listening to this and you want to send some questions, and you're more than welcome to, 9292 is the text number, that's ZBZB, and we'll fire it through to these guys. And you're welcome to say which one in particular you'd like to answer the question. Kylie, I want to come to you on this in a ticky. But first, let's start with you on this, Aaron. You have talked a lot about policing and about how this is the relationship between policing and cannabis at the moment. Do you think the thing is slightly overblown, the idea that police are spending heaps of time on trying to police it?
Clearly they're not. One of my best friends is a senior police officer, and he made it clear that if his staff arrested someone for smoking a joint, there'd be a please explain meeting in the office the next day. That isn't the policing policy, and stronger than that, it's now in the Misuse of Drugs Act that they're not to do it. And that was just last year. Why are we not giving that law a chance to prove its value, given that even when it was just policy alone, the arrest rates consistently fell by 70%, they fell over 20 years. And so we are increasingly seeing that to smoke a joint is not a risky thing from a criminal point of view in this country. Those who smoke a joint don't need to be afraid that the cops are going to come knocking on the door and put them in jail.
Yeah, what do you think, Kylie? For a lot of people, they're going to look at the cigar. Well, decriminalisation's not, it's a halfway position.
I vehemently disagree with what Aaron's just said. So Ministry of Justice data came out today in relation to cannabis-related offending. Still over 5,000 cannabis-related offences, 59% of which were for use and possession only. 5 people imprisoned in the last year solely for possession or use. No other charges.
I will never believe that till I walk up and shake their hands. I have been in the police 30 years. I've locked many people up in my early days for possession of cannabis alone. I've never heard of anyone going to jail for it. If they've gone to jail for that, I'll guarantee. I don't believe it. That's the point. What I will say has happened is a judge has decided to write off thousands of dollars worth of fines for one of those people by giving them 2 weeks in jail on that offence. But the way it works now is to charge someone with possession of cannabis. First, you have to get past the constable on the street using his discretion. There's 90% of them gone for cannabis possession and use alone, I'm saying here. Then you've got to get a sergeant in a watch house to not give them a pre-charge warning. Then you've got to get a prosecuting sergeant to agree to the conviction. It's nearly impossible. What people are charged with cannabis offences are because they're caught for other more serious offending.
That's not what the
and
data says,
and
mate.
that's
But this is 230 people solely.
This is for
that.
solely
Yeah,
cannabis
solely
data.
for that. Yeah, that's exactly.
No,
what it said.
the 5,000 talk about is not just solely for cannabis.
No,
the 200 is.
half of them.
And I would
half
accept
of them for
not
possession
half,
and
200.
use. Yeah.
200 alone.
Yeah,
we're talking.
yes,
not
that's right.
half of
for
5,000.
conviction for that. Yes, yes.
And
but
I would
let me
accept
remind you, the
probably
police
is-
do not make the law in this country. The police do not make the law. And Section 7 of the Misuse of Drugs Act has not had the impact that it should have had. So that was shown in Official Information Act data released in August that showed in the year to date that had not happened. And
But has it been given enough of a chance?
Well, that's a good question. But police practice had not changed in that year from August to August.
This is one point I do agree with Kylie on. Like since 2009, police prosecutions have dropped 70%. So in other words, police are legalising something by discretion. Is that right? Shouldn't the Parliament and the people of New Zealand decide what the law is, not cops by discretion? Because that's what we've really done as police officers, and I'm not totally comfortable with that. And it also means different parts of New Zealand apply discretion differently, which again I don't think is fair. So that's another reason to look
which
at
comes
this.
actually to your basic point here, isn't it, Kylie? That when it is applied differently in different parts of New Zealand and with different ethnicities, you end up with young Māori who are disproportionately punished for this, right?
So you might think that's
Why?
only 5 people, but I'm pretty sure I could tell you what
Why
those
does
5
that
people look
happen?
like. Well, it's racism. Well, obviously, it's partly racism, partly differential outcomes as a result of priors and other
Could it be a
things going on in
reflection-
your life.
Could it be a reflection of the fact that you predominantly have, for an ethnic group, they are overusing?
No. The data doesn't show that. It's not about differential rates of use. It's just about policing.
But they are also overrepresented as in burglaries and
in
violent
every
crimes,
offence
so they're getting
category.
caught for other offences, which is the cannabis. Doesn't mean it isn't worth looking at and understanding. It's certainly something that's got to be addressed.
Okay.
But there's lots more to it than just the statistics alone.
Look, the other thing that's happening out there at the moment quite a bit is that people are getting into their cars, Aaron, and they're driving stoned. So isn't legalisation going to make it easier for us to police this?
Well, we've already had that come out in the last week that it'll be a Bill of Rights issue. That
we have Bill of Rights issues all of the time. They don't really matter.
But clearly, we are not ready for this kind of world. We don't have the kind of testing equipment, and Chris could speak to that better than I, but we're not ready yet to be able to say to someone behind the wheel of a car, not only do you have cannabis in your system, but you are too impaired to drive.
But the thing is, Aaron, and you are right, but the thing is, Aaron, kids are getting behind the wheel and adults are getting behind the wheel stoned anyway, and we're just letting that happen, right?
Well, we're not letting it happen.
Well, what are we doing about it?
Well, what we're certainly not doing is making it even easier for young people to get their hands on this stuff, knowing that those who use, we can see now in the research, are much less likely to see themselves as impaired for driving. And so those who use cannabis think they drive quite well under the influence, but they don't.
I agree with you. So what do you say, Chris?
Yeah, it's a significant issue. I mean, there is no great way now of testing people for the use of cannabis or most drugs at roadside testing. You can do some mouth swabs. They're pretty hit and miss. You then have to do a blood test. Are they actually impaired? That's the other challenge, and this will be the challenge in the workplace as well. Are people impaired, or have they just used cannabis 2 weeks ago? It's a real problem. But without a doubt, drug to driving is a significant issue. Will it get worse? Well, it'll only get worse if there's more use, and that's not clear either. So we need to understand that. But I take Aaron's point, though, that if something's legal, does it make it that you're more inclined to do other legal things like driving when you've used it? And that's something,
And
again,
look,
to understand in the research.
The Bill report said that use will go up. The Bill report said 14% use will become 18% use. So we know there's going to be more
the first
cannabis.
few years, and then it'll drop back to normal. But the thing that you can do with making cannabis legal when it comes to driving is start somewhere. With alcohol back in the 70s, we didn't have the technology we do now. At the same time this law is being introduced or passed, the government has introduced new rules that give police new powers and new technology to do drug-impaired driving. The saliva tests that they have in Australia, which aren't perfect, but let's start somewhere. Look at what we've done with alcohol. We haven't made alcohol illegal. We've educated drivers about the risks. We've given the police technology. We can do the same for something like cannabis, as they have done in Canada, who didn't experience an increase in road issues.
The thing is, Ross, and there's a lot of people coming through on the text machine right now. For example, here's a text that says enough people die on the roads due to alcohol. Why add an extra boost to the death rate? Now,
Cannabis is here.
Yes, and this
You
is
know,
the
we're
thing.
not inventing cannabis with legalisation.
I totally
right?
agree with you. I mean, we've established, right, super easy to get a hold of. People are driving stoned in any case. But if you make it okay to go to a local shop and light a bong up and have a little bit of a chat with your mates and stuff, and then you can drive in your car afterwards, and you can't be. You can feel fairly confident that there's no way to test that you've got it in your system.
No, you can't.
That's not going to disincentivize anybody, is it?
You do what we've done with alcohol. You give police powers and the tools that they need. You do driver education, public education about this is not okay, and you'll get
but
caught.
is the technology to
It's
catch them
good.
there?
Let's start with what we've got. It's good enough. They've had it in Australia for a few years. The technology is only going to get better.
Right.
Yeah, well, I spoke to the minister in Canada who brought this in, who, interestingly enough, is an ex-chief of police in Toronto.
Yeah.
Grew up in the hard streets of Toronto, done a lot of time with organised crime. And the comment he made about that is, look, we've got this big machine, it's about this big, it's ridiculous to carry around a police car to test people for drug driving. But that's what our phones were like once, and eventually we'll end up with something like that.
I see.
We look forward to that.
You got to get that. You got to do it in order to harness the technology and hone it. All right, we'll take a break with these guys. Stay tuned. Remember, at the end, we're going to hear from our panelists as to how they think we can protect kids from weed if it does get legalised. Next up, though, after the break, let's deal with health, the medicinal argument, and also the mighty big income that this could produce for a country that's pretty strapped to cash right now. 28 to 8, News Talk ZB.
Good location, eh?
It is. The median sale price is up 6.2%. Your work is 23 minutes away. And we're in zone for a great primary school.
School? Why does that matter?
Are you ready to settle on a new home? With OneRoof, you'll find all the information you need, from thousands of in-depth listings, sales data, suburb information, property records and much more. Be property prepared with OneRoof.
How do you know when something's real? Is it real if you've read it, heard it, seen it? The story is a story as soon as it's been shared. How do you know you can believe it?
Believe it when you read it in New Zealand's Herald.
G'day, I'm Sam, and here at driven.co.nz, we've got a nifty toolbox to help make buying and selling a car easier. Selling, but not sure what price to put on it? Our car value calculator will give you a really good starting point. If you're buying a new car, our cost to run tool will give you a rough estimate of what the car will cost you each year to run. We can also tell you the best time to sell so you get the sweetest possible return. Check out the toolbox at driven.co.nz.
Are you for it or against it? The Cannabis Debate on News Talk ZB.
All right, it's 25 to 8, back with the five of us, Ross Bell, Chris Cahill, Kylie Quince and Aaron Ironside. I've got a text here for you, Ross. It says, Heather, can you please ask Ross how allowing families to grow 4 plants of their own is going to keep it out of the hands of teenagers? We don't have this now. Sounds loose as a goose to me rather than in control.
Is the texter seriously saying we don't have people growing cannabis at home? Cannabis is here. We are among some of the highest users of cannabis in the world. Voting yes does not create cannabis. Voting yes puts a system of control in place.
No, and I agree with you, but I mean, come on, like you might have someone who's got a nice vegetable patch who right now thinks, I'm not going to stick cannabis there, but now they go, oh, this might be interesting, right? So it's definitely going to have more people growing it.
It's legalising it for adults. Adults get to make that choice.
Yeah,
and
how
as
do you
many
stop that person's kids or local kids?
I hope
grading
they're
it?
good. Well, I hope they're good parents. There's rules in place about where and how you can grow it. But, it would be legalising it for adults, and you can tell adults to be good parents and be careful of cannabis around their kids. I don't think you're going to get a whole lot. Like I go to buy beer, I go to the supermarket. I don't brew my own. I think it's going to be the same kind of thing. The vast majority of people will use the convenience of a store. There won't be a lot of home grow, just as there's not a whole lot of people brewing their own beer and growing their own tobacco.
Okay, Aaron, is it possible to get addicted to weed?
Oh, most certainly.
How
That's
so?
why we have the category of cannabis use disorder, which is the official designation for those who have a problem.
And how does that manifest itself?
Well, like all addiction problems, addiction ultimately will have a couple of features. That I'll have tolerance, a growing tolerance, I'll need more of it, that it's causing problems in my life, and that when I go to give up, I find I can't. And so I know cannabis use disorder is real because I'm someone who used to have it.
Yeah, so are you saying that you used to have it?
Absolutely, without a doubt.
For how
I
long
could
were you
not
using?
stop. I used every day for about 3 years.
What made you stop?
Well, in the end, I realised my mental health was crashing. Well, I'll tell you what role the law played, actually, on this conversation about growing. Because my flatmates came to me one day and said, we're spending lots on weed. We go to the tinny house. Why don't we just grow it? And I said, no. I'm okay with being a user because I know if the cops find us, there won't be a big problem. But I know if they find plants in the backyard, we just became growers and distributors, and that's going to be a problem. But back to your question, it was that my own mental health began to suffer. I couldn't push away the anxiety and depression. But worst of all, for me, was that a very ambitious young man who at the time was on a major radio program and supposedly doing well, had lost all motivation and all ambition. And I realized the only thing I thought about when I woke up in the morning was when I could get back here to get high.
All right.
Look, I can support Aaron in that. I can tell you that the reason most cops are against the legalisation is because they have seen the harm of the young kids who become addicted. The real waste of a life they see. A lot of them in rural Maori communities. And equally, that's where the least support is. And so if you're going to do this, you've got to make sure you get that support out of those rural communities so they can get the education and they can get the help when they have got addiction issues.
This is one of the things that I wanted to ask you about, Kylie, was exactly this. I mean, we are going to have to put in mental health support, right, for people. It is going to be those rural communities, those Māori communities that miss out, isn't it?
No doubt about it. I mean, we're talking about communities. I come from a community where the nearest police station is 70 kilometres away in Kaikohe. And so, when things go wrong, it's a long way to call for help. So you're talking about communities with very poor infrastructure per se, whether you're talking health, housing, any sort of social support. So absolutely, but which would also mean that that is a concern amongst communities. And I mean, I'm more concerned about the reasons why my whanaunga are smoking rather than the fact that they are smoking. I'm concerned about where they source product from, but I'm actually more concerned about if you use anything problematically, it's obviously a social issue in terms of what are the other issues in your life. You don't have access to good employment, you don't have access to education, you don't have access to good even leisure activities in remote communities. So this is not the problem. The problem is the fact that there are other things going on. It's not the fact that you use, it's why you use, and particularly problematically.
This kind of brings us, though, to Ross, to another, I guess, another argument here, which is that it's okay because we're just going to get all this money, and Bill estimates it's going to be about $1 billion in tax annually from it, and we're going to put so much back into mental health. And the fact is, very few of us believe that will ever happen, right? Because we've been disappointed by these kinds of promises before.
Oh, well, I don't know why people don't believe it's not going to happen. We over the last little while, probably starting under John Key with National and the meth plan, and they started to treat drugs as a health issue. And we are beginning to get, particularly in provincial and rural communities, more and more innovative health services. We have to fund them somehow. The thing I like about this law is that the money which is currently being spent illegally will be taxpayer dollars that can be reinvested. I like that. And there are services. Yes, they take time to get up and running, but we have some really exemplar services, particularly ones where police and health are working together, and more of that. And we need more of that. But legalisation isn't going to fix all of these systemic problems. But it's such a much greater. If you look at some of the things that Burl have said and the PM's chief science advisor said around the health issues around cannabis, the law right now acts as a barrier to someone seeking help. It may not have for Aaron, but it does for many, many people. They say, I'm too scared, I'm going to have my kids taken off me. Removing that
But why
fear.
would they? It's decriminalised.
People are no. It's not. People are still fearful. People are still fearful. You're still going to get OT coming in. If we are genuine about treating this as a health issue, which we should be, what other health issue is there that we have a criminal law in place? So let's get real, treat it as a health issue, and put a health-based law in place.
Okay, I just want to go back to you on this one, Chris, because I heard you, I think it was you, had a bit of a giggle at the $1 billion in revenue.
I think there's a bit of fairy tale in those sort of revenues. That's I don't see that happening.
What do you think's more realistic?
Well, I think it'll be a lot less than that. But one thing I am very, very clear on, this should not be a revenue gathering scheme for the government. We've seen the states in America did that. They basically made it a free-for-all and just took the money. It's got to go back into the mental health, the drug addiction services. We've got to make the best out of that.
Yeah, but again,
not
like
just
me,
stick it into a pool.
I have seen so many promises. We've all seen so many promises. Like me, do you have a lack of faith that that's actually going to happen?
I would have a lack of faith, and I think that's where the legislation has some of that in there. I think it needs to be stronger, so the government can't dip it. Make the best out of it. We've got such a major problem with mental health in this country. We need to get those resources into that. If this is a chance to add to that, do it. Don't put it into the coffers.
Yeah, all right. I just want to talk to you about this, Ross. Are you still dropping off the leaflets saying that this is going to improve, that legalisation will improve access to medicinal cannabis?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it'll improve. It'll improve. No.
Two issues?
It'll improve access. It'll improve affordability. Doctors aren't prescribing. A lot of conditions probably wouldn't need a prescription. Absolutely. Patients are telling us, which is why we will continue to push this issue. Patients are telling us how difficult it is. We know that you'll get a bigger range of products that will be safety tested and much more affordable for those patients, and I will stand with them.
So why does the New Zealand Medical Association oppose the referendum? Because the doctors are very clear. You don't grow medicine, you don't smoke medicine. You can't dose yourself if you smoke it. You can't dose yourself if you eat it. The plant is not the medicine. The medicine is made from one of the 100 ingredients inside the plant, CBD. But the plant itself is not the medicine, and this is why the New Zealand Medical Association says no to any move to legalise recreational cannabis.
The science around medical cannabis is not limited to CBD. There's about 300 or 400 different components within cannabis, and the research shows that you probably need a mix of all of them. So
but we don't encourage people to just go and get high instead of going to the doctor.
This is one of those issues where patients are well ahead of medical doctors. It's a whole other show about.
Well, the problem is, Ross, I'm a mental health professional, so I have to clean up the mess that makes.
You're not a registered medical professional.
No, but I think my master's in psychology qualifies me to talk about this.
Aaron, it's not just prescription medicines that are solutions to people's problems, right? I mean, there are some. You could, if I don't know, this is a terrible example, but if you're constipated, you could go eat some prunes, right?
Shouldn't this fall under medical cannabis? Why should people self-medicate with this drug? We don't allow them to self-medicate with anything else. If it's as good as it is and it works, get that law to work right. Get the right price and the right types of cannabis out there for people. But saying, no, this will fix everything, medicate yourself, it's pretty risky.
Self-medicate with alcohol than any other product on the market.
It's not a good idea.
No, perhaps not, but it certainly happens. The problem here is, gentlemen, both of you, that actually we only have one registered product that people can get their hands on, right? Sativex.
Let's fix the law.
It's extremely expensive. It's $1,400 a month.
Terrible.
So this is why. I mean, if we've held out this carrot of medicinal cannabis and said this will be fine, and people cannot get their hands on it, that is why you have green ferries. That is why people want to be able to get a hold of it.
What a terrible law! And we're going to trust that government that made medicinal cannabis legal but put it out of the hands of the sick and suffering. We're going to trust them to now fix that bad law with a new law. Let's force them to fix the original law. We don't need a new law.
It's also giving people the wrong idea. So by muddling this idea of recreational cannabis and medicinal cannabis, I heard a mother on the radio recently saying that she was going to be able to give her 6-year-old son who's got MS cannabis. Sorry, you will be breaking the law if you supply your 6-year-old son with cannabis, and it's quite a serious offence. But she believes, honestly, that she will be allowed to do this. That's muddying the water. And this is where I say people have to cut through some of the rhetoric and understand the facts that they're going to vote on.
All right, let's take...
Can I say one
You're
thing,
more than
one
welcome
further
to.
thing, which is that I think the use of the languaging around medicinal versus therapeutic and people self-medicating, people have used cannabis for thousands of years around the world, and for a number of conditions, most of which people would never go to a health professional for. I can certainly tell you that no Māori would. If you're just talking about low-level anxiety, issues with sleeping, or just relaxing after work with a beer. You're not going to go to the doctor for that. And you certainly don't want to take Sativex under your tongue for that. You want to have a DAC, you want to have a smoke, or you want to take something in a different preparation which isn't something that only uses 2 of the cannabinoids in this product that's used around the world since time immemorial.
All right, let's take a break with these guys. It's 13 away from 8, and when we come back, the question that a lot of parents will be asking, if we get into the place where we have legalised it, what do we do to protect our kids from getting a hold of it? News Talk ZB.
Good location, eh?
It is. The median sale price is up 6.2%. Your work is 23 minutes away. And we're in zone for a great primary school.
School? Why does that matter?
Are you ready to settle on a new home? With One Roof, you'll find all the information you need, from thousands of in-depth listings, sales data, suburb information, property records and much more. Be property prepared with One Roof.
How can you tell what's real? Is it real if you've read it, heard it, seen it? The story is a story as soon as it's been shared. But how do you know you can believe it?
Believe it when you read it in New Zealand's Herald.
List your vehicle for sale on Driven for just $20. Load up to 25 photos. Keep your listing up until it sells and reach thousands of potential buyers. Sell your car at driven.co.nz.
Looking at the pros and cons, the Cannabis Debate on News Talk ZB.
Alan Ross Bell, Chris Cahill, Kylie Quince and Aaron Ironside. So the question we want to talk about right now is what's going to happen to the kids. Ross, we've got a ban on social media, right? Or on, what should we say, on advertising. But in terms of social media, are we going to have people who are cool, who the kids like, lighting up bongs and getting photographed?
No, the rules are really strict in the cannabis bill, and I think we've learnt from our mistakes around alcohol and tobacco. So the bill is starting really tough. With tobacco, it took us decades to try to pull that back. This bill starts really tough. There is no advertising, no marketing, whatsoever. The storefront, you won't know that it's a cannabis store. There'll be a subtle little leaf, so you're not going to get cannabis. Will not be in your face. You can't also use in public.
Okay, so the question that parents are going to be asking is, what do we do to keep the kids safe? Kylie, if we legalise it and this is normalised for kids, what do we do?
Well, part of it comes to that definition of normalisation. I'm a parent of 3 teenagers. My 3 teenagers have never put anything to smoke in their mouths that I'm aware of, and they haven't had a drink either. But we've modelled appropriate social behaviour and I would hope good parenting.
Not every parent is a good parent, right?
No, that's right. But I've also served on school boards for 30 years, and I've seen that some board members, disengage kids, stand them down, exclude them from school solely because of the criminalisation of cannabis. And I think that's wrong. We treat kids that drink alcohol differently when they come before a board. I would like those kids to be. So currently, prohibition has been problematic in the way that we differentiate problematic use. And I think we can do that better. So is there a better way of regulating or addressing that behaviour? I think so.
Okay, what do you say, Aaron?
Look, when it comes to the advertising, we've just got to be really honest with ourselves that the social media world is far more agile than we are anticipating. And the reality is, in the world of Snapchat, where images appear and disappear just as quickly, the reality is that these things are able to be advertised, and they are already. We've just recently had a young lady in Hamilton was arrested for trying to sell her edibles through social media. This is an impossible thing to police. And policing energy can't be spent looking at computer screens day in, day out, trying to work out who's trying to show photos of their bag of weed that's for sale.
Don't you think, though, Aaron, it's just going to end up like ciggies and alcohol for kids? You go through a phase, you try it out, and then you go, that's not for me. I want to get on with my life and my career and my family.
No, because that's the problem of the highly addictive nature of cannabis. Listen to this. This is this week. The US annual National Survey on Drug Use and Health was published, and they've just declared that there are 699,000 12 to 17-year-olds with cannabis addiction, 187,000 new cases in just the last year alone. The problem is the addictive nature of high-potency THC means that when young people have a problem, they really have a problem, and when you are this young and your brain is still developing, you're 4 times more likely to develop psychosis and 4 times more likely to become an addict.
Okay, what do you say, Ross? Because, this will be, I'm sure, what you're hearing from parents a lot.
Oh, absolutely, but we're not going to wish cannabis away. We've tried to do this for a very long time. So my message to parents is we do need to get real. We've been able to do it with alcohol. We've done it with tobacco. This is here. What I like about the bill is that it puts young people, protecting young people, and it puts harm reduction right at the heart. And the bill, which I really hope people will read, I know you won't, but it's a very strong piece of law. It's a much more pragmatic, realistic, mature approach to this drug that can cause problems.
The problem, though, is, and I keep coming back to this, the bill can do everything it wants, but if kids see their parents smoking it, if they see cool people at the corner store smoking it...
It's happening now. The things we're worried about are happening now, and our law is not doing anything to fix that.
This is one of the reasons why legalisation is preferable to decriminalisation, because the only thing you do with decriminalisation is protect users from the police. But the free-for-all of people advertising as they like, pushing it as they like, it's all out there. So having good legislation is really important. And that's one thing we were very clear on. You've got to have the legislation in place if you're going to do this vote. But then it comes back to the education. And that's that, putting that money back in educating, starting young, having good education plans right through. It worked with meth for so long. We made meth a dirty drug. Young people did not want to touch meth. The GFC, the global financial crisis, came along. The money dried up. We took our foot off the accelerator on that education, and we lost a generation that went back
Chris,
to
can I just be clear? Are you saying that an education program for something that's illegal reduces use?
No, I'm saying if we legalise it, we've got to follow up with legislation.
But didn't you just say that the meth program worked? Wasn't meth illegal when this education program was happening?
Well, it did work. It did work. You look at the use of meth amongst teenagers dropped appreciably at those education campaigns.
Right, so we don't need to legalise them. We just have the program.
Really good. Well, you're still ignoring the fact that you've got lots of people that are using it illegally already. So you've still got to deal with that issue. It's not going to go away. It's a matter of making the most out of it, and education is a key part.
All right, guys, it's been really good to talk to you about it. I really appreciate all of your expertise on this. It's been fascinating, that's for sure, and I'm sure it's given everybody a lot to think about in the lead up to this referendum. And just by the way, it is, of course, on October 17, so make sure you do your research. As Ross says, read the bill if you are bored. It's going to take you a long time to read it. And so can I just say thank you to all four of my guests, Ross Bell, Kylie Quince, Chris Cahill and Aaron Ironside. And for you at home, you can watch and share this debate. The video is now on the News Talk ZB website. We're hosting another debate just for your information also on the euthanasia referendum. We're going to do this on Wednesday, the 1st of October at 7 o'clock right here on News Talk ZB. Until then, have a good evening.